Deep beneath the island of Crete, under the marble halls of a mighty king, there was once a maze so vast and twisting that no man who entered it ever found his way out. And at its heart lived a creature neither god nor mortal, half man, half bull, born from pride, cursed by gods, and remembered forever as the Minotaur. Long ago, Crete was the jewel of the Aegean, its people proud, its palaces gleaming with gold and painted murals of bulls and dancers. King Minos sat upon the throne, claiming not only the loyalty of men, but the favor of the gods themselves, for he was said to be a son of Zeus, ruler of Olympus. Yet divine blood does not shield mortals from hubris. In his desire to prove his right to rule, Minos prayed to Poseidon, god of the sea, and asked for a sign, a living symbol that the gods had truly blessed his reign. Poseidon heard him, and from the foaming waves sent forth a magnificent bull, pure white, its coat glimmering like sunlight on water, its eyes calm and divine. The people of Crete trembled before it, seeing in the creature a gift no mortal king deserved. Minos had promised to sacrifice whatever the gods sent, as a token of reverence. But as he beheld the bull's perfection, greed rose within him. He could not bring himself to spill such sacred blood. Instead, he deceived the god. He kept the divine bull for himself, hidden in his royal stables, and sacrificed another, common beast in its place. It was a simple act of pride, the sort that kings perform, believing themselves untouchable. But the gods are patient. Poseidon's vengeance would not come as a thunderbolt or a flood. It would come through the slow corruption of a royal heart. The curse fell not upon Minos, but upon his wife, Queen Pasiphaë. Poseidon twisted her mind with a longing that defied reason, an unholy desire for the sacred bull that her husband had stolen. Pasiphaë resisted at first, weeping, praying, clawing at her own thoughts, but the curse grew like fire through her veins. In desperation, she turned to Daedalus, the cunning craftsman from Athens who served at Minos's court, the man who would one day give wings to humanity itself. She begged him for help, and Daedalus, fearing both the wrath of the queen and the king, obeyed. He built her a hollow cow of polished wood and ivory, covered in the hide of a real animal. Inside Pasiphaë hid herself, and through Poseidon's cruel will, her desire was fulfilled. What emerged from that union was no ordinary child, and no god could undo what had been set in motion. When Pasiphaë gave birth, the cries that echoed through Knossos were of horror. The infant had the body of a strong young boy, but the head of a bull, the features of man and beast fused in something tragic and blasphemous. His mother loved him still, for she saw in him innocence, but to Minos he was a living humiliation, a reminder of his deceit. He could not bring himself to kill it, perhaps out of fear that Poseidon's vengeance would deepen, yet he could not let it live among men. He called upon Daedalus again and commanded him to construct a prison fit for a monster. The inventor labored day and night, and created the labyrinth, an endless maze of twisting corridors, dead ends, and stairways that led back upon themselves. It was said to mirror the human mind, a place where reason was lost, and instinct ruled. The Minotaur, still a child, was cast into it, left to wander the cold stone halls in darkness. As the years passed, the creature grew. He was fed at first by the king's servants until he grew too dangerous to approach. His strength became monstrous, his hunger insatiable. Some said he howled at night, calling out for a mother who could never answer. Others whispered that he wept, though no one dared to hear him long enough to know. His name was Asterion, the Starry One, but the world forgot it. To them, he was simply the Minotaur, the bull of Minos. Time, however, is never kind to the guilty. Minos' empire faced rebellion and war. When his son, Prince Androgeus, was slain in Athens, Minos' grief turned to fury. He demanded tribute from the Athenians, 7 young men and 7 maidens every 9 years, to be sent to Crete as payment for his son's death. These youths would be led into the labyrinth, offered as sacrifice to the Minotaur. None ever returned. Year after year, the ships sailed, black sails heavy with sorrow. The people of Athens wept, for they knew that to be chosen was to be devoured. The myth says that even Minos himself avoided the doors of the labyrinth, for sometimes at night he could hear, beneath the palace floors, the faint echo of his own monstrous creation, breathing, waiting, remembering. It was during one of these tributes that Theseus, prince of Athens and son of King Aegeus, stepped forward. He was young, proud, and determined to end the curse once and for all. He volunteered to join the doomed, promising his father that he would slay the beast or die trying. His father begged him to reconsider, but Theseus was resolute. Before he departed, they made a pact. If Theseus triumphed and returned alive, he would raise white sails on his ship. If he failed, the sails would remain black. When Theseus arrived on Crete, the people whispered of his courage, and word reached Ariadne, the daughter of Minos and Pasiphaë. She was drawn to him, perhaps by his beauty, perhaps by his bravery, or perhaps by the faint sense of fate that linked them both to the same hidden monster. She could not bear to see another innocent perish. Secretly, she sought out Daedalus, who pitied her and gave her a secret, a ball of thread. If Theseus used it to mark his path, he might one day find his way out of the endless maze. That night, under moonlight, Ariadne met Theseus at the entrance to the labyrinth. She gave him the thread and her blessing and perhaps her heart. He promised her that if he survived, he would take her away from Crete, far from her father's shadow and her mother's shame. When the dawn came, the tributes were led into the labyrinth. The doors closed, sealing them in utter darkness. The air inside was heavy with dust and the smell of ancient stone. Theseus tied the end of the thread to the doorpost and began to descend. He carried only a sword, a torch, and courage enough for all. The walls were alive with echoes. Each step seemed to whisper back his fears. The further he went, the less the world above felt real. Time dissolved in the twisting corridors. Shadows played tricks on his eyes. He passed the remains of those who had come before, broken weapons, torn cloth, names scratched into the stone in desperate hope. And then, faintly, he heard it, a low rumble, half growl, half breath. The Minotaur had caught his scent. When Theseus reached the center of the maze, he saw the creature at last. It towered over him, massive and terrible, eyes glowing with rage and pain. Its horns curved like sickles, its breath steaming in the cold air. But what Theseus saw, beyond the horror, was tragedy, a creature born of divine cruelty, forced to live and kill in darkness. The Minotaur roared, shaking the labyrinth itself, and charged. The battle was brutal. The creature struck with the force of a storm. Theseus barely dodged each blow, his sword flashing in the dim light. Stone shattered, dust filled the air, and their roars mingled like thunder. Time lost meaning, only struggle remained. Finally, as the beast lunged again, Theseus drove his blade upward, through the Minotaur's throat. The roar turned to a gurgling cry. The creature fell to its knees, clutching at the wound, blood dark as wine spilling across the stones. And in those last moments, the Minotaur's eyes softened. For the first time in his life, the maze was quiet. Theseus stood over him, chest heaving, sword trembling in his hand. He looked down at the body, half man, half beast, and whispered a prayer, not of victory, but of sorrow. Then, clutching Ariadne's thread, he followed its path back through the twisting halls until, at last, he saw the faint glow of moonlight and the sound of waves beyond the door. Ariadne was waiting, her hands trembling, her eyes filled with tears. They fled together, sailing into the open sea, hearts light with triumph and love. But the gods seldom allow mortals an easy ending. On the island of Naxos, Theseus left her behind, whether through cruelty, forgetfulness, or the intervention of the god Dionysus, who claimed her as his own. No one can say. As Theseus sailed home, the wind was quiet, and his thoughts heavy. In his grief or distraction, he forgot his promise to his father. The black sails still hung above the ship as it approached Athens. When King Aegeus saw them from the cliffs, he believed his son was dead. In despair, he threw himself into the sea, and the waters have borne his name ever since. The Aegean Sea, Theseus returned as a hero, but a broken one. Behind him, Crete fell into sorrow. Daedalus, having served too many cruel masters, attempted to flee the island with his son Icarus, using wings crafted from feathers and wax. We all know how that ended. The boy soared too close to the sun, and his wings melted, sending him falling to his death. Daedalus lived, but never escaped his guilt. The labyrinth itself was sealed, buried by time and silence, but they say that at night, if you listen closely among the ruins of Naxos, you can still hear faint breathing, the ghost of a creature that was once called Asterion. Some scholars say the story of the Minotaur was born from truth. The ancient Minoans of Crete worshipped the bull as a sacred symbol of fertility and strength. Their palaces were vast and maze-like, filled with winding halls and frescoes of acrobats leaping over bulls. Perhaps, in time, myth replaced memory, and what was once a ritual became a warning. The labyrinth might not have been a literal prison, but a temple, and the Minotaur, not a monster, but a priest, or victim, or god. But myth, by its nature, speaks in symbols. The Minotaur is more than flesh and horn. He is the product of pride and punishment, the secret that kings hide, the guilt that nations bury, the darkness we lock away inside ourselves. Every man has his own labyrinth, and every labyrinth hides a beast. When Theseus killed the Minotaur, he believed he had slain evil itself. But he did not destroy the maze, he merely escaped it, and perhaps that is the truth hidden beneath this story, that monsters are not born, but made, and that every sin, every lie, every act of pride, builds another wall in the endless corridors of our own creation. So remember, the next time you hear the name of the Minotaur, that he was once a child, born of a curse, raised in solitude, hated by his own blood, a creature who longed for light but was condemned to darkness. In the end, he was not a villain, but a victim of gods and men alike. And somewhere, beneath the dust of Crete, in the silence of forgotten chambers, the labyrinth still waits, ancient, eternal, echoing with the heartbeat of a story that refuses to die. Please like and subscribe for more mythology content.